In the small town of Macon, Georgia, something happened that made even the local news anchors pause. A 30-year-old black man walked out of the courthouse holding hands with a 65-year-old white woman. They had just gotten married. The crowd didn't clap. Some stared. Others whispered. But what nobody knew was why. This wasn't about money. It wasn't about green cards. And it sure as hell wasn't a joke. This love story, strange as it looked on the surface, hid something so deep, so real, it shook people to their core. Over the next few minutes, you'll discover a truth that might challenge what you believe about age, love, and loyalty. But fair warning, it's not what you think. Hit like, subscribe, and let's go. James grew up on the south side of Macon, Georgia. Nothing fancy, just red clay roads, the hum of cicadas, and his mama's cooking filling the house on Sunday afternoons. He worked part-time at a local garage, fixing up old trucks and riding his bike home before sunset. Folks around town knew him as the quiet type. Respectful. Always helping someone carry groceries or change a tire in the heat. But there was something about James, this calm, unshakable stillness. Like he was always waiting, for something. Or someone. His life was routine, peaceful, maybe even boring to some. But deep down, James carried a silence most people didn't notice. A silence that had been growing for years. And soon, it would speak. It started on a Tuesday. Just after lunch, James was wiping grease off his hands when a car pulled up, vintage Cadillac, polished like it came out of a dream. Behind the wheel sat a woman, silver hair tied in a scarf, sunglasses too big for her face. She rolled down the window and asked, "Do you work on classics?" Her voice was calm, but something in it made James pause. Not the question itself, but the way she looked at him. Not like a customer. More like recognition. Like she already knew him. James offered a polite nod and took her keys. But as he turned away, a strange tightness formed in his chest. He didn't know why. Not yet. But something had just shifted. And this was only the beginning. She came back the next day. Same car. Same scarf. Same stare. This time, she brought cookies. "For the crew," she said, placing them on the counter. But there was no crew, just James, working alone. He smiled politely, thanked her, and watched as she sat on the bench outside, for almost an hour. Not talking. Not reading. Just watching. Days passed, and she kept returning. Sometimes with questions about her car. Sometimes with nothing at all. And every time, James felt the same chill, faint, but steady. He started to notice things, how she always knew when he'd take his lunch break, how she somehow remembered details he never shared. Her name was Evelyn. 65, retired teacher, lived alone. But James couldn't shake the feeling, she wasn't just passing time. She was waiting. For what, he didn't know. But it was starting to feel personal. Too personal. One evening, as the sun dipped low and the shop lights buzzed on, James made a choice. He followed her. At a distance, quiet, careful. Evelyn drove out of town, past the church, past the old textile mill, to a quiet cemetery on the edge of the woods. She parked, stepped out, and knelt beside a grave, just one. No flowers. No visitors. Just her. James waited, heart pounding. When she left, he approached the stone. And there, carved into the worn granite, was a name that made his stomach drop, Nathaniel Carter, 1988 to 2016. His father's name. His father's birth year. James had never visited the grave, he never knew where it was. And yet this woman did. Questions flooded him like a wave. Who was she? How did she know his past? And why was she crying over a man he barely remembered? That night, James couldn't sleep. The name on the grave echoed in his mind like a forgotten melody. He pulled out an old shoebox from under his bed, dusty, untouched for years. Inside were faded photos, newspaper clippings, and a single birth certificate. His father's. The signature at the bottom. Evelyn M. Carter. She wasn't just some customer. She was his stepmother, married to his father in 2012, just 4 years before he died in a car crash James was too young to understand. Nobody ever told him. His mother kept it quiet, distant, buried. And now here Evelyn was, showing up out of nowhere, watching him, feeding him, learning his rhythm like she had never stopped loving what his father left behind. James felt the floor shift beneath him. This wasn't about romance. Not at first. This was about blood. And memory. And something far more dangerous, a second chance she may have been planning for years. Word started to spread. First, a neighbor asked about the older lady always seen at the shop. Then his cousin sent a message, "Bro, why's that woman posting about you on Facebook?" Evelyn had uploaded photos, candid ones, of James fixing her car, smiling, sitting with her on the bench. The captions? "Found peace again. He reminds me of him. True love has no rules." The town reacted fast, and not kindly. Whispers turned into stares. Customers stopped coming. One night, a brick smashed the garage window. Evelyn didn't flinch. She simply told James, "Let them talk. They don't know what we have." But James did know something now. He was being pulled into something far bigger than himself. A woman grieving. A town judging. A future that felt both comforting and terrifying. And then came the letter, from her lawyer. One line, revision of will, full beneficiary, James Carter. This wasn't just love anymore. It was war. The fire started just before dawn. Flames licked the side of the garage, swallowing years of work in minutes. James stood barefoot in the gravel, watching it all burn, tools, photos, the bench where she first sat. The fire department called it suspicious. No one was arrested. But James knew. This town had made up its mind. And Evelyn? She vanished. No note. No goodbye. Just gone. For days he searched, hospitals, shelters, even that cemetery, but there was no trace. He thought maybe she had let go. Maybe she realized the cost of being seen with him was too high. The story felt over. Empty. Until, weeks later, a letter arrived. No return address. Inside was a photo, old, cracked, black and white. His father, holding a baby. And beside him, Evelyn, younger, smiling through tears. On the back, in her handwriting, "You were always mine to protect. Now you choose what that means." James looked up. His hands trembled. The fire had taken everything, except the truth. James sat alone in what was left of the shop, a skeleton of ash and silence. But something had shifted. Not just in him, in how he saw her, saw himself. He stopped waiting for answers and started building. He fixed what he could. Cleaned the bricks. Painted the bench. Then one morning, an envelope appeared under the door. No stamp. Inside, court documents. The will was real. And attached, a handwritten confession from Evelyn. She had cancer. Late stage. She'd never told him. She didn't want pity, only peace. And love. The kind she never got to give fully to his father. James stood in the sunlight, wind warm on his face. She hadn't vanished in shame. She'd given him a choice. And now, the whole town watched, silent, as he reopened the garage, alone but not afraid. On the sign above, freshly painted, Carter and Evelyn Auto. A new name. A new start. Built not on scandal, but on something stronger, truth. A year later, James still kept the photo on his desk, his father, Evelyn, and that tiny baby in his arms. Him. The whispers in town had quieted. Some still judged. But others, they came by for oil changes, coffee, even quiet conversations on that same bench. James had changed. Not into someone new, but into someone whole. Not because of money, or marriage, or even loss, but because of truth. Truth that love doesn't always come wrapped in youth or wrapped in logic. Sometimes, it arrives late. Complicated. Uninvited. But it stays. So now, I'll ask you, if love knocked on your door, but didn't look the way you expected, would you open it? Or would you walk away, just to feel safe? Think about that. And while you do, hit like, subscribe, and tell us in the comments, what would you do?